Alright guys, welcome back to Warno. Again, we're looking at the editor today. We're going to do a quick tutorial and overview of everything there is to know about layers. How they function, how you're going to use them, what I found best for when I'm using it. Now of course the editor is still in alpha, so a lot of this is subject to change, and there's still some stuff I don't understand within the layers, mainly because we can't really use it or test it yet, as we're still missing export functionality. So I can like play around with a lot of this stuff, but I can't actually test to see if anything it works. So a lot of this is kind of theory from judging the maps that Eugen have already created and kind of going off that, and then what I've kind of figured out myself. So layer control is this little tooltip on the right here, and you can enable that with the L button. That's the shortcut L, just there, or you can bring it up with the items top left, and you got open layer control. So you have it open like this. You can use the little bottom arrow on the right just to affect its size. And then you can save your configuration of this whenever you wish. So this is broken up into a few different sections. You've got level build, level design, and IA strat, which is AI. So level build is basically kind of the rendering of your map. Like it's all the models, objects, the buildings, roads, trees, everything like that all comes under level build. Level design is more about like kind of the gameplay elements, so command zones, deployment zones, various things like that. And then finally AI strat is all about the AI strategy on the map. So we'll run through these one by one. We'll go with level build first, and we'll just kind of open these up. As you can see, there's a lot of different options in here. I've already gotten some enabled, but we'll disable all of them. And you'll see that we can no longer see anything. So first of all, enabling terrain. This is your first layer you kind of want to have on, and this is just the basic texture of the terrain. So you've got rocks here, grass, different kinds of like coloured grass, stuff like that, but there's nothing actually on here. When you zoom out, you'll see a lot more, and that's due to like a rendering of the map, which we don't have access to yet. But it's like, I think the whole map is taken as like a whole in different layers, and it's called baking, and I think they take the different layers of construction of the map, put them all in together to combine them to create kind of a low res kind of 3D model, basically. Again, this is just kind of theory, which creates this like low res kind of image when you're zoomed out to increase performance, obviously. And then when you zoom in, you can see it starts to change. You get like different kind of ones, which are kind of like stickers. And you zoom in more because we haven't got anything enabled, and we get to the terrain. So you can't change this yet. You can't do anything to stop this one zoomed out. So even if you make really big changes to the map, when you zoom out, it will still look like the original map. Don't worry. Hopefully that is coming soon, and we can change that. But for now, you can't. Next up, we've got our level build. So this little tab, you can open or close it. You got stickers, long range stickers, and models. Let's enable models first. So as you can see, you got your buildings, your trees, just basically all your 3D objects essentially have just come in now. So you can put that on and off. But you'll also notice when we zoom in, there's no roads or anything underneath the houses. So that's what stickers are. Stickers are basically those textures kind of painted underneath everything. And again, when you zoom out, and if you've changed stuff, those will start to go. So let's say I grab this house, put it over here, and you can see it's got a ground texture and stuff like that. But if I zoom out, you can see like the ground kind of goes. And so long range stickers just enables that sticker to stay for longer. As you can see, I can zoom right out and it's still there, that sticker. So that kind of helps you work around that baking thing. But I usually have all of these on when I'm building maps. And finally, the water one as well. as you can see, big crevice in the ground. Voila, water. So these top ones I have on all the time, unless I specifically want to like not look at certain stuff or like move things, like then maybe, but those are usually on all the time, so I just kind of leave those like that. Next up, you've got sparse DB. Again, a little tab you can open and close. So this one I've only found so many use cases for. Let's enable it. You can see there's only hide vegetation on this map basically. So we'll enable that one. You can see that goes along the roads and like around the buildings and stuff. It's basically like a little zone you can put down, and it automatically goes along roads and like around buildings and stuff like that, where it just removes the vegetation. So hide vegetation, and you can see this most clearly when you're like going on a road like this. You can see that it just stops the vegetation from actually going into the road, and so it keeps it clear. As for these other ones, I really haven't found too much use for them just yet. You can see if we search in the unit creation tab just down here, we can open it up with U. We search for vegetation. You can see we got clearing line, zone clearing vegetation. So let's grab like a clearing line of vegetation and let's place it down here. As you can see, it's cleared away through the forest. We'll just turn off that hide vegetation. You can see there's now a gap in the forest. So you can kind of create nice, interesting things without actually having to adjust where the forest is. You can use these clearing lines instead. As for the slopes, that's not going to do much. I haven't really found much use for them just yet. I don't think it really comes into mountains because I'll always be able to see it and I can't. So for these, I don't know. I don't understand them quite yet. But the only main use I found is hiding vegetation around like roads or like buildings or like clearing some specific like bits of like trees or bushes which you want to get rid of. Okay, so next up we have the vectorial view. This is a pretty interesting one. There's a lot going on here. I will run through all this all and explain it. On some maps there's more than others, but it's important to have this little tooltip open, and that's used with P. Press P, you got the selection tooltip. So this will basically tell you what it is you've selected. You can select a bunch of items on there, so you've got a bunch of stuff. You can go through and like remove highlighted from there, keep highlighted, or remove everything else, so you can kind of be a bit more specific about what you're selecting within a certain area. You can also search for stuff here, so if I search for selection zone, you can see those come up, and those will be kind of highlighted to me. I can search for forests, you can see all these little dots, those come up as highlighted. It's just because there's a lot of them, so they come up like that. Search for house, you can see it's highlighted all the houses and stuff like that. So this is a really useful feature, and obviously you got the different filters for your object types there as well. So vectors, vectorial view, you can see here it's like light purplish color is like a semi-forest transition, and then you got, I think it's just semi-forest with the light green. Yellows, you got multi-filler flows, so this is kind of where you can move through the forest a bit quicker. And you can see a lot of those going on in this map. And this is all basically the underlying like gameplay of the map that you've created. You've got blue bits here, which are like gameplay rocks, so obviously units can't walk along these. That's where the cliffs are. You've got yellow for the roads here. This red kind of color is districts or like buildings you can get into. This blue and red is like a main road, and this basically just describes all the underlying little gameplay elements of the map. So if you want to see where all your buildings you can get into are, where all your roads are, different flows through the forests and like movement stuff there, you can. I don't use this that much. It's just kind of interesting to look at. It can be pretty handy for looking at forests if you're wanting to get like flow areas through the forest like that. But other than that, I haven't found too much use for it. And obviously over here we got the water as well. So that's what the vectorial view does. Next up, navigation. Similar to the vectorial view, I guess. Green is where your forests are, your cover. Red is where you can't go. That's your rock. You want to build a gameplay rock you've got going on there. Those are the only two actual types of things I've found so far. Rock and forest. So yeah, I mean that's that view. It's kind of handy if you want to look at see what is actually a forest and what isn't. So like some of these are like, so this I believe is smart line. Let's see, click through bocage. So this counts as cover. This, however, is a border field. Yeah, smart line border field ditch trees. These do not count as cover, even though they kind of can look a bit similar. There's like an important distinction there. Like all of these little cover lines of trees are bocage. Next up, roads. Really easy one. It just highlights where all your roads are. It's useful for junctions if you actually want to see if your roads are connected. So you can see here, it's flowing through and going all directions. So sometimes I have this on if I'm working on roads and make sure I want to get them connected. Next up, district. So there's a few interesting stuff here. So districts will show you the buildings which are occupiable. So that's a building with a red square or red like rectangle, red kind of object around the building. And then it will show you the selection zones. That's this blue kind of shape you see around the buildings here. I've got one selected now. So what this does is sets what can be occupied and the size of the occupation and the buildings within that occupation and which building the unit will go into. So we can see here this selection zone is going around these three buildings. Now when a unit goes into this zone, you choose to put it into these buildings to occupy it. It is then going to choose one of these buildings for that unit to be in. And so I say, let's say it's this building. I can't remember off the top of my head which building it actually goes into on the actual death row map. Let's say it's this building. This means that the unit's hitbox is in this building here and not in these ones. This is important for like artillery and all sorts of stuff like that. It's also important for like line of sight stuff, and it kind of just sets your district size basically. Now you can adjust these. So if you want it to be like individual, let's just remove that forest. Individual, oh come on, screw me over. Individual like buildings rather than like a group of buildings for a zone. You can adjust these as you want to just go around that individual building. So what will happen now is, I don't have to adjust all of those. This is its own little building. And then we can take another selection zone, place it around these buildings here. And now this is another building that you can occupy. So these are now separated. We've got two different selection zones. And then one of these buildings here will be chosen for the unit to go into. And then this is its own separate thing that you can get into. So this is super important to look at when you're building your cities, your urban areas, any buildings, what you want to be occupied, what you don't want to be occupied, how big you want your zones to be, or like building areas to be that units can get into. It's super important for all of that. So I hope that makes sense. If you guys do have any questions about anything, just pop them in the comments and hopefully I can help out. And if you guys have any more information, pop that in the comments as well. We are all trying to figure this out as we go. Next up, water feedback. This is kind of an odd one. I think this is just about shallow water. So if I type in water in my unit creation down here, we've got some industry water stuff. And this is highlighted. So I think it really is just about where shallow water is on the map. Because heavy water isn't highlighted. Nope. So it's just shallow water, so any shallow water elements on your map, they get highlighted with that. We got snap elements. So this kind of shows off along the roads and on the buildings and stuff like that. Is where things snap to. So down the bottom left we got our snap mode. I'll just stop working for a second. And we'll go object snap. Let's select ourselves a building. There you go. And so this will then snap along the lines of the building if it wants to behave. You can see it is snapping onto those buildings but at a very odd angle. Sometimes it does this, it behaves weirdly. Let's rotate it here. It can behave a bit odd like that whenever you cross like a road or things like that. It will keep switching around, it can be very annoying. But let's get up. It's wanting to snap like that. But you can see it's snapping to those lines and those roads. That one's just doing it weirdly, very annoying. You can see little points will do it as well. Like that, it's just going to snap to those roads. And it'll snap to other points too. Like it's not just like roads, it'll snap to these points here. But this one just highlights buildings and roads to give you a better idea of where all those kind of snap points are on them. So you've got a square here with that junction. So that's snap elements. Ray trace, I haven't got a bloody clue. No idea what this does. I haven't found anything it highlights, any use for it at all. So I'll just ignore it for the moment. Zone DB. This is another kind of odd one. I think this is to do where like the sparsity B things are present, I would guess. Because it kind of just comes up along the roads. Or maybe it's to do with like traveling on the roads. It's kind of a tricky one. I think it's mainly to do with like the clearing vegetation, like stuff like that, because you kind of got it along these like parking lot things and along the roads. And I think this is kind of roughly where that hide vegetation is and the destroyers. Yeah, so those are overlapping. So that's what that's all about. Kind of showing the same thing. I guess that's just like an overall view rather than a specific view. Yeah, I don't use it at all really, so I'd kind of ignore it. It hasn't really been too handy for me. And then we got all the FX stuff. So I don't think there's any on this map. Could be. Let's search in our selection thing. So we've got some SFX. So these are all sounds for the cities and like various places. But we do have more effects which we can use in our unit creation. See, we've got smoke in here. There you go. And so these are basically just going to enable you to see the FX. Some are static, some aren't. So this fire, I believe, is a static one. Along with this smoke, yep, so these are both static. Got an FS bank and FS models feedback. So I believe the models feedback one is a smoke kind of element. I'm trying to find which one I think it is. Not sure. Either way, these two together enable you to see all your different FX on the map. Let's get rid of those. Let's turn that off. Even if you turn them off, sometimes they take a little while to disappear. And then we're on to tech elements. 3 of these, I've no idea what they do. But the main one I do use actually is crossroad ties. And so this is all about what's the primary road and what's the secondary road. So basically the red ones indicate on a junction or crossroads, which road has priority, and it's this one here, these red ones, and then the blue one is the secondary road. These will naturally pop up on any junctions or crossroads or connections that you've made on your roads, or they're also part of the crossroads which you can place down. They'll naturally form up, and they can change depending on how you like move the roads and stuff. And again, the others, I don't know what they do, so I kind of just ignore them. And then finally, we've got editor feedback. So you got mouse position in the world and snap grid. So the mouse position in the world is just this white dot, which is pretty handy. It's kind of hard to see the snap grid on, but you can kind of see where your mouse is within the world and its kind of selection zone around it. And then we've got the snap grid. So the snap grid, again, bottom left, you can switch this over to grid snap. This snaps to the corners of the grid. Now you do have options here. You've got level build, ISO and AP grid. You can snap the grid to the center of the grid if you wish, and you can change the size of your grid as well. So you can make it pretty big, you can make it really small. You can times it by 2, divide it by 2. Just quickly do that. These massive grids. And so that's just kind of helping you build the map as you want. I don't usually have these enabled unless I'm doing like very specific stuff with like probably fields. It kind of speeds up the process there if you're making a ton of fields, because that's still a really slow thing to do. And so that's level build. Now we can only adjust and affect all these elements when we are in the level build layer. Once we move off this layer to level design, we can no longer adjust these models and all sorts of stuff like this. So when I switch over to level design, this rendering and all this stuff is still here, so you can just still change what you can see, but you can't move anything, you can't affect it, which is super handy, because when you're doing all your stuff in level design, you don't accidentally mess up everything in the map. It doesn't get too like convoluted and there's not too much going on. So, level design. In here, we've got all our kind of gameplay elements. You can see we've got deployment zone for recon, deployment zone for para, command zone, and playable zone. So let's have a look at all these. Let's enable them all, load them all up. It takes a little while sometimes for these to appear. There we go. So there's quite a bit going on here. We're going to disable our deployment zones and our command zones. Can zoom in, render this. And you can see here, the whole map is highlighted because the playable zone is pretty much the whole map. But you can adjust that. So now this is the playable area. This is excluded. This is more like the 1v1 version of Death Row. You can make it like small like this. You can make it any shape, size that you wish. So super simple. Turn that off. Zoom in, render it. Command zones. So these are all the command zones on the map. And again, you can move these about, you can adjust these, you can rename them, make new ones. If you press I, you bring up item properties, and you can change how many points each zone is worth. So this one's worth 3, 2, 2, 2, and 2. And you can see these also have a auto name tag on them. So I believe this is just like generating the name for each zone when it goes in, because each side has like different naming scheme and stuff. So I think it's to do with that. Or you can specifically set the name of the zones if you wish. So that's command zones, pretty easy. And then finally we have the deployment zones. So here we've got our main deployment, and then we've got our recon deployment and our para deployment. Very useful for judging whereabouts units can get up to on the map and like where your meeting point's going to be on the map. And obviously you can move this about and set this where you want. The recon and para deployment set a certain distance from the deployment zone, so it just moves according to that. And yeah, that's the deployment areas and zones. There's a little bit more that goes into these deployment zones, but we'll go over that a bit later. Let's hide all that for the moment, and then we'll move on to level design objects. So, here we've got a few interesting things. We'll make them all visible. You'll see we've got our reinforcement lanes. We've got air and ground going all along here, and you can see them over this side as well. We've got a few different things like circular zone, influence point, label, spawn, all of these things. What I found with these things is they mainly come up in operations. So you can open the operations map and you can have a look at what's going on kind of underneath the surface. And we'll do that once we've gone through all of these layers. We'll go have a look at one of those maps and kind of examine what's going on. So we'll kind of leave these for the moment when we go into more detail with them then. But let's open up level design again, and let's enable the deployment. Let's disable these ones we don't actually need to look at, like so. So here's our deployment zone, and here are the arrows going into it. Now, I can't test this, but the theory is that these arrows have to go into the zone, and then it is enabled as a kind of reinforcement road for that zone. That's like the theory of it. I don't know if it actually works, because I've no way to test it, but I think that's what happens. You've got a few different bits of information here. If you press I, obviously item properties comes up. And it's got all this stuff on here, number of alliance, phase, ranking, start position, team affection, like all these things, which I don't know what happens if I change them. We can go to the other side and see. So we've got -1 here on this number alliance. Over here it's -1 as well. So not too sure. I think that's just kind of set so where it's not actually applied. And then you have this little thing here called depart. And I believe this is where the camera starts. And also this sets the alliance number. So we've got alliance number 1. And over here we have alliance number 0 and camp 0. So I believe these are what set which side is on which. So these are going to be on different alliances. So they're going to fight each other. And then each person's camera starts like here, like above the depart. And then these, because they're -1, they don't have a set alliance, I believe. And so they'll just go to whatever zone they're going into and which depart is within that zone. It's my guess. Like this is all a guess and all theory, but that's what I think. Hopefully we can confirm it at some point. And so that's your level design stuff in your layer. Now there's a little bit more going on. We've got all these different things here. We've got our tags, influence points, circular zones, and you'll see in the unit creation all of this stuff has changed. We've now got all sorts of new items in here. These are all the units. There's a bunch of test units in there, and then you can just pop these down. So you can have a look at the models, check them out in a bit more detail if you wish. And then obviously in item properties, we've got a bit more going on, number of units to spawn, phase, experience level, stuff like that. And there's some interesting stuff in here, like the Raven, which isn't in the game at the moment. It was removed, but it's here in the editor, so you can look at it in all its glory. We'll go over these more in the operation later, but you can look at all the units there if you wish. And then finally, AI strategy. I'll close this item properties. Really simple one. We'll enable the zones and corridors together, and you can see the map is split up into all these different zones, and then we have the corridors. So I believe these are like the avenues the AI is going to go down. The set corridors it's going to like attack and defend through, and then the zones are kind of the way it splits the map up and interacts with the map, attacking, defending, like moving, things like that. And obviously you can move all these, you can change all these about however you wish to. But you examine all the maps, examine all the different like AI strategies are on the map, and you can kind of set them as you change your map. You can just change AI strategies on a map. And when we finally get export functionality, you can see how that affects the AI. So you can try and actually improve the AI a bit by changing this kind of layer. But that's it really to the AI layer. And that's pretty much it to the layers. Not much else to go over. We'll go ahead and open up a challenge. Let's do the Diaberg Salient. Why not? Let's open up that one. So we're going to go into AI Strat and we're going to open up the area. We've got the zones, we've got the different corridors the AI is going to attack through. And then we're going to go level design. We're going to enable level design objects. And zones, and we'll just open this up here. We'll remove playable zones, so a little bit easier to understand. And then we'll probably remove the AI zones as well. So, as you can see, there's quite a bit going on here. But you'll see, if I go back to level design, so I can actually select these. We've got tags for FX. We've got enemy T80 tag. So this isn't actually in, but I believe this is something to do with like a spawning thing. It's kind of like hard to understand and figure out what these things do. But you can see a unit here. Gavostica, let's open this up. You can see it comes in at 2 experience level, Camp 2, and it's got 0/0 here. So these are things that are like tricky to understand unless you can test and change, but got different zones, and you can see the deployment zone here. It's got the arrows going into it. It's also got a depart. So I think this really is what sets the alliance and like where players start. And then you can see the AI like strategy corridor kind of moving up over to here. Diff one here, tag FX. No idea what that does. I think it's kind of like a coding thing. That's something they've got going on. We've got Tunguska, and then we've got a AA left point tag here. So this is where like the AA is being tagged for you as the player to say like, hey, AA here, that's an objective. And we've got the same going on here, AA midpoint, AA right point. Back here we've got tag FX, more artillery, tag FX there. Back here we've got Foxtrot circular zone, and then we've got the actual command point zone. So I believe this is kind of like detection, which is going on if like enemy units are in it and things like that. We've got auto name tag here, and that's got a token and name like kind of set for it. So you can examine these operations and see in a bit more detail how like they're constructing them and what's going on, and attempting to figure out how some of this stuff links together. And that is all your layers, guys. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, pop them down below. And if there's anything you want me to go over, I can do, and hopefully I can kind of help you out and help you to understand and get going in the map editor. See you guys next time.